She stepped out of the elevator with nothing but her name and her pride. The doorman didn't stop her, though the penthouse wasn't hers anymore. Not officially. Not since he gave it away like she was disposable. But the thing about power? It feels safest in silence, until silence rises. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because, tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Elena Warren Monroe was used to being looked at. Not seen. Just observed. From across gala tables, elevator lobbies, glossy magazine covers. She had the kind of presence that made people lean in but hesitate to speak. Statuesque. Flawless. Quiet. Just how Julian Monroe, her husband, liked her. Until the day he decided she no longer fit the image. The Monroe penthouse stretched over the 80th floor of a Fifth Avenue tower. Walls of glass. Floors of marble. A place so silent you could hear your own loneliness echo. Julian had chosen every inch of it. Elena had made it a home. Fresh Orchids Weekly. Her late mother's jazz records spinning softly in the mornings. The scent of bergamot and sandalwood drifting down the hallway like memory. They hadn't shared a bed in months. Not since the Miami incident. Not since the tabloid photos of Julian with someone not her. Still she stayed. Because sometimes staying feels easier than starting over when everyone's watching. Then came the keycard. On a Tuesday. Tucked in a white envelope, slipped under her tea saucer by their housekeeper. No note. Just a change. Her card no longer unlocked the penthouse elevator. Elena confronted Julian that evening. He was in his home office, browsing luxury yacht brochures as if he hadn't just erased her from their home. I couldn't stay married to someone who makes a scene, he said calmly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She simply asked, "Is she living there now?" Julian looked up, unbothered. She understands discretion. The next morning, the building staff refused to let her up. She stood in the lobby, holding her purse, her silence, and 1,000 untold things. The doorman looked down, ashamed. "Mrs. Monroe. I was told." She nodded once. Left without a word. She moved into a 2-bedroom loft in Harlem. It smelled like fresh paint and the past. She slept on a futon for 3 nights before her new bed arrived. Stacked her books on crates. Made tea from a pot she'd bought herself. Julian never called. But she saw the headlines. Julian Monroe's new flame spotted in ex-wife's former penthouse. The mistress with the millionaire view. Elena didn't flinch. But she began to write again. The novel she'd abandoned after their engagement. The one about a girl who vanished before the world could use her. At night, she stood by her new window. It didn't face Central Park. It faced the city. Alive. Honest. The cafe was small. Tucked between a bodega and a laundromat. She'd found it on accident, wandering after dark with no intention but to feel anonymous. It had mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu. A girl behind the counter who smiled like she meant it. "First time here?" she asked, wiping her hands on a faded apron. Elena nodded. "Try the honey ginger tea," the girl said. "It's good for starting over." Elena blinked. Something in her chest flickered. She sat by the window, notebook open. A blank page staring back. No editor. No husband. No expectations. She began with a line. She left without the silence this time. That evening she returned to the penthouse. Not because she wanted to, but because she had forgotten her mother's necklace in the back of the walk-in closet. The doorman tried to stop her. She didn't slow down. Julian wasn't there. But she was. The mistress. Wearing silk. Eating berries from the same glass bowl Elena used to place on the terrace table. "You shouldn't be here," the woman said. Elena didn't respond. Just walked past her. Retrieved the necklace. Paused in the doorway. Then said, "Be careful. He starts kind." Outside, a paparazzi camera flashed. Someone had followed her. The next morning, her face was online. Billionaire's ex-wife returns to Penthouse. Desperation or drama? The comments were worse. "She's jealous. She stayed for the money." Typical. She sat in bed, phone glowing, tea cold. Then she powered it off. She returned to the cafe. Wrote 2 chapters. Cried quietly in the corner when no one was looking. The girl at the counter brought her a muffin. "On the house," she said. "You looked like you were winning something today." Elena smiled. And meant it. That week, she taught a writing workshop at a local nonprofit. Something she hadn't done since grad school. The kids were blunt, funny, brilliant. One girl, Amira, age 11, asked, "Do you think people can still love you after they stop seeing you?" Elena blinked. Then replied, "Yes. But more importantly, you can love yourself before anyone else sees you." She didn't realize she meant it until she said it. Elena didn't expect the article. She thought the worst was over after the photos. But this one hit different. From Penthouse to public library, Julian Monroe's ex now teaching creative writing to kids. It wasn't cruel, but it was condescending. A tone laced in mockery. The message was clear: how the mighty have fallen. Julian sent flowers. Not to apologize, but to remind her she still carried his last name. A white card tucked inside. "You don't need to do this nonprofit thing. Let me help. For old time's sake." But she didn't reply. But she stared at the card for a long time. At night, she Googled apartments again. Worried her savings wouldn't last. Worried no one would read her book. Worried she was foolish for trying to matter outside his shadow. She closed the laptop. At the next workshop, Amira asked why some people talk big but never do anything. Elena didn't know how to answer. Because some people were just tired. Then, a woman from the nonprofit approached her after class. Older, sharp, soft-spoken. "I read your excerpt," she said. Elena blinked. "You did. You should publish it. Women need to see this." Elena's throat tightened. "I'm not sure it's ready." The woman smiled. "Neither were you. And yet, here you are." She went home and read her manuscript again. This time, she didn't edit for perfection. She edited for truth. But the next morning, a letter arrived. Legal. Cold. Julian was petitioning for control of the remaining marital assets. The foundation. The royalties from her old essays. Even a portion of the book, on grounds that he'd supported her during their marriage. Her hands shook. She didn't cry. She photocopied every page. Called a lawyer. Didn't cancel her class. The next day, she arrived early to the cafe. Notebook in hand. The same barista from before brought her tea without asking. "You're still writing," she said. Elena smiled faintly. "Even when I want to disappear." The barista shrugged. "Then write that. People will read it." That night, she dreamed of her mother. Jazz humming from the record player. Hands warm on her back. A whisper, "You're not meant to be background." She woke up, lit a candle, and wrote until sunrise. It was a gala. A fundraiser for urban literacy programs. Exactly the kind of event they used to attend together. This time, Elena was invited for her teaching. Her students had submitted poems. She was reading one aloud. She nearly declined the invitation. Until she saw Julian's name on the donor list. And her own name, spelled incorrectly, under community partner. She wore deep navy. No jewelry but her mother's ring. Her entrance wasn't dramatic. But heads turned anyway. She greeted staff. Thanked organizers. Sat near the stage, surrounded by teachers and students. No one asked about her ex. She didn't offer his name. Julian arrived 30 minutes late. With his mistress on his arm. Cameras followed. People shifted in their seats. Elena didn't. She simply turned a page in her notepad. Her name was called. Applause rose. She stepped to the microphone. Spoke clearly. Not about herself. About the girl in her workshop who wrote poems like gospel songs. About the boy who had never read aloud until he heard Langston Hughes. About words as shelter. She ended with a quote. "The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any." Alice Walker. Silence. Then applause, real this time. Julian clapped, but his face was unreadable. She returned to her table. Didn't look his way. Later, they met at the bar. Not planned. Just inevitable. He approached, glass in hand. "That was more than I expected." She didn't blink. I know. He took a sip. You look good, oh. She tilted her head. Careful. Your date's watching. He smiled just slightly. Jealousy never suited you. She turned toward him. You gave away a home. I found my voice. You tell me who lost more. He opened his mouth. She walked away. People watched her, not him, as she returned to her table. The mistress? Still seated, eyes narrowed, unsure if she was winning anything at all. Before the night ended, the event host pulled Elena aside. We're launching a mentorship program. Would you consider leading it? She nodded once. Only if the kids keep the pen. Elena returned to the old brownstone on 134th Street on a quiet Sunday. It had been her mother's. Now it was boarded up. Graffiti traced across the bricks like forgotten memories. She stood there a long time. Not with grief. With resolve. Inside her loft that night, she found the shoebox. The one she hadn't opened in years. Inside, photos. A letter. And one cassette tape labeled 1998. She didn't have a player anymore. But she remembered the sound. Her mother's voice had been firm but soft. A nurse. A woman of little money, but great presence. You can be pretty and brilliant, she used to say. But if they make you pick, choose brilliant. Pretty fades. Smart builds. Elena had spent her childhood between school, books, and hospital waiting rooms. Her mother worked double shifts. Came home with aching feet but a full heart. When her mother passed, Elena was 23. Alone. With student loans and a half-finished novel. Julian found her in that year. Handsome. Magnetic. He loved how quiet she was. He said it was elegance. She later realized it was convenience. Their wedding had no vows written by hand. Just a script chosen by his PR team. Even then, something inside her flickered. But silence had always felt safer. At a writing workshop 10 years ago, a guest poet said, "If you don't tell your story, someone else will sell a version of it you can't afford to buy back." She remembered writing that quote down. Then never speaking up again. Until now. That week, she wrote a chapter titled, "The Price of Peace." In it, the protagonist gives up everything to avoid confrontation. Then realizes the silence cost her everything that mattered. The chapter ended with, "I'm not angry. I'm awake." She submitted her manuscript to 3 indie publishers. No agent. No elevator pitch. Just truth. 2 weeks later, one responded. "Your story doesn't whisper. It claims space. Let's talk." She lit a candle that night. Wrote her mother's name on the dedication page. And smiled at the flame. His name was Andre. They met at a book launch. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her publisher had invited her last minute. A small, buzzing room in Brooklyn, filled with indie writers, editors, and coffee cups that steamed in the autumn chill. Andre wasn't flashy. Just a clean-cut man with kind eyes, working in community housing. He asked what she was writing next. Not what she'd survived. "I don't know yet," she admitted. He smiled. "That's the best place to start." They ended up talking near the coat rack for 30 minutes. About old jazz records. Langston Hughes. How Harlem bookstores were vanishing too fast. Andre didn't ask about Julian. Didn't name-drop the Penthouse. Didn't say, "You're that woman." He just listened. Like the silence between her words had value. A few days later, he came to her workshop. Brought gently used books to donate. Watched Amira read her poem like it was scripture. Afterward, he said, "You've built something here." Elena laughed softly. More like stumbled into it. "Maybe. But you stayed. That counts." He didn't call every day. Didn't push. But he was consistent. Tea on Thursdays. Books left at her door. A text saying, "Read page 112. It reminded me of your voice." The first time she invited him in, she was scared. Not of him. Of herself. Of wanting connection after so much disconnection. He noticed. Didn't comment. Just sat beside her on the couch while Nina Simone played low. "You don't talk much," he said once. She looked at him. "Is that a problem?" "Not at all," he smiled. "Still waters write better books." She laughed. A real one. From her chest. He never asked for details. She offered them slowly. One night she said, he gave the penthouse to his mistress. Andre didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't console. Just said, and yet here you are. 3 simple words that landed like freedom. The letter arrived on a Monday. Legal. Cold. Stamped with her former husband's firm's emblem. Inside, the message was clear. Our client, Julian Monroe, asserts that certain chapters of your manuscript violate confidentiality clauses outlined in your prenuptial agreement. Continued attempts to publish without redaction may result in litigation. She stared at the paper. Not angry. Just tired. Then she poured tea, sat down, and read the letter again. Word by word. Her phone buzzed. It was Andre. Saw your name trending again. You okay? She replied. He's trying to bury my book. He replied seconds later. Then it must be good. The publisher called. Sympathetic. Can we tweak some details? Make it less traceable? Elena thought of Amira. Of the other girls with poems like battle cries. No, she said. If I water it down, it won't heal. That night she went to the cafe. Same corner table. Same honey ginger tea. She pulled out her notebook and began drafting a statement. Not defensive. Not emotional. For 4 years, I was silent in a marriage built on power imbalance and image. I wrote this story not to harm, but to help the women still waiting for permission to speak. She clicked post. Walked home under streetlights that didn't flicker. Let the city hold her. The next morning it was everywhere. Hashtag let her it. Hashtag her voice heard. Former students. Writers. Public figures. Even quiet strangers reposted her message. She didn't ask them to fight for her. They just did. Julian called. She didn't answer. His lawyer emailed again. Her lawyer replied, truth isn't defamation. At the next workshop, Amira hugged her without asking. You didn't back down, she whispered. Elena smiled. Neither will you. At home that night, she found a note slipped under her door. No envelope. Just his handwriting. You've made your point. You win. Was that the goal? She didn't write back. Because winning was never the goal. Freedom was. Elena hadn't seen Andre in nearly 2 weeks. Not because of distance. Because of timing. The book went to print. The nonprofit asked her to keynote a summit. Her inbox overflowed with invitations, endorsements, interview requests. But every time her phone buzzed, she hoped it was him. She finally texted. Coffee this week? He replied 5 minutes later. Same table still open. The cafe hadn't changed. Neither had he. No judgment. No expectations. Just his calm eyes and the way he always waited for her to speak first. I thought publishing the book would be the hardest part, she said. Andre smiled. And? It wasn't. What was? Believing I deserved the last word. He stirred his tea. You know, he said slowly, a lot of people want to love you for surviving. Fewer want to love you while you're still healing. She looked at him. Which one are you? I'm not here to be a chapter in your recovery, he said. I'm here because you remind me of home, and I don't walk out on that. Silence. Comfortable. Later, they walked toward the park. No cameras. No questions. Just footsteps and dusk. She said, Julian always told me I was hard to reach. Andre smiled softly. Maybe he was always standing in the wrong place. They sat on a bench. Leaves overhead. A breeze that carried peace. She asked, Does it bother you that I'm still learning how to be loved right? No, he said. It just means I get to witness the best part. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Not to be held, but to rest. Back home, she placed the first copy of her book on the windowsill, next to her mother's ring. A small vase of fresh orchids beside it. She didn't need the penthouse view. She had everything that mattered within reach. The bookstore was packed. Folding chairs pressed shoulder to shoulder. A makeshift stage with a single mic, stacks of Elena's book lined the wall, wrapped in soft light. She wore cream. Simple. Elegant. No brand name to flaunt. No diamond to prove worth. Just her. Andre sat in the front row. Next to Amira. Next to Elena's editor. Next to the woman who once told her, "You're ready." Julian stood near the back. He hadn't RSVP'd. Hadn't sent flowers. Hadn't asked for forgiveness. But he came. Alone. Not to win. Just to watch the woman he could no longer define. Elena stepped to the mic. Applause rose, not loud. But full. She smiled once. Then opened the book. For a long time, I thought silence was safety. I thought being chosen meant staying small. I thought love meant being quiet enough to fit someone else's idea of perfect. But I was wrong. This is for the women who lost themselves in someone else's spotlight. For the girls told that softness means weakness. For anyone who was ever given less than they deserved, and dared to want more anyway. The crowd leaned in. She closed the book. And said, "My name is Elena Warren. I reclaimed it last week. Legally. Officially. Fully." The beat. Then applause that filled the room. Not just for the book. For the journey. Outside, cameras flashed. But this time, she didn't flinch. A reporter asked, "What would you say to your ex?" She looked at the sky. Then said, "I'd say thank you." The reporter blinked. Why? Because sometimes, you don't wake up until you've been buried. That night, she and Andre walked home. He didn't say much. Just held her hand, steady. At the door, she paused. "I don't need you to complete anything," she whispered. He smiled. "I know. I'm just here to witness." Inside, her phone buzzed with messages. Reviews. Reader notes. Praise. She set it down. Lit a candle. And started writing page 1 of the next book. Not to prove anything. Not to heal anything. Just because she could. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.